Can you just kind of talk about the status of ACT, SATs, if they're being delivered online, or just anything that you can tell us kind of in that area right now?
Yeah, some good topics to discuss there. Certainly dovetails with what we just talked about a little bit,
Mhm.
where there's some uncertainty. I mean, I think probably the 2021 recruiting class, those kids are, this is on the hot button a little bit more for them. And everybody's in a little different position, I think, as a junior golfer. Some were quite proactive in taking SAT or ACT and have some great scores already. Don't need to retake. It's a little less of an issue for them as far as adding that with their transcript, perhaps SAT subject test scores and other information that coaches may need. But there's just as many or more kids out there that they took it once, didn't do that great. They know it's not their best test score, and they're having a difficult time figuring out, when am I going to be able to take it again, and how that's going to jive with the recruiting process that the coaches have in mind. It's like, got to get a test score in place so that if I do need it, I can be properly reviewed as a candidate that has a complete set of data for the coach to evaluate. But then there's some kids that don't even have a test score at all. So that brings in various questions for parents as they think about this, and junior golfers. So a few things. I think, the ACT and SAT agencies are certainly trying to create solutions. I'm sure families have looked at those websites and they're seeing some additional testing dates emerge, through the summer. Um, who knows how things will unfold, but I do think there are also, as far as COVID and whether those, that may have impacts with these tests, but I think the agencies are now also gearing toward the possibility of being able to offer those tests in a remote fashion. Um, Maybe one answer that I would have for families on this is, what to do, is really relates to a conversation I had last week with a client of mine, a junior golfer, and she had a conversation with a coach. And that's one thing I would advise for families is, look, you have to talk to them about, here's the reality, coach. Here's where I am with my testing or not, and what are the requirements you're going to need to see from me as you go through your recruiting evaluation for candidates. In this case, let's just talk about 2021 for a moment. For kids that maybe don't have their opportunity and are coming down this final summer, what are you going to need from me? What is your school going to need, your admissions department? What are they going to need to see? Will they need a test? Or maybe they don't. I have run into situations where, some schools are already creating a bit of a temporary, like, if you have a test score, great, maybe we'll need that, but we may not need a test score. Other schools I'm seeing are, and the coaches are coming back saying, hey, we're definitely going to need one. So in the case with this client of mine, the discussion was very much, she asked these questions. The coach came back, and this happened to be a school that definitely has more elite level standards. The coach's thinking a test score is going to be probably needed. So she encouraged the coach encouraged my client, said, look, why don't you go ahead and take, there's some ACT options that are probably going to come up a little sooner for you than the next SAT option in August, September. Do that, take an aggressive strategy to start getting some test scores on the board that could be helpful in the case of, and that was with just a conversation with one coach. But that's what I'm telling everybody, exactly what that coach has said, is that, look, find strategies to, in an unknown world right now as to whether you may or may not need a test score. Not all schools are going to be test optional, even if they say that they are. Sometimes coaches like to see test scores anyway in the review process of vetting final candidates to bring into their program. So I would encourage families and junior golfers, look, try to find some ways to get a test score going, even if it means switching the test format, and communicating with the coaches out there to get a good, firm understanding of what it is they're going to need. And that'll best direct your actions as a junior golfer between now and coming through the close of summer.
Great. Susan or Ted, anything to kind of add to that?
Yeah, Great points, Nikki. One of the things I'm kind of asking this out loud. We're in this kind of a group talk. The NCAA obviously for the Eligibility Center requires a test score right now, right? Combined with your GPA. So even if it is test optional at this point, the NCAA is requiring a test score through your certification process. This could change too, like everything else. I would assume that or not assume, but I could think that it might change where they don't require it. But as of right now, you do need a test score on file to be certified along with your corresponding core courses and GPA. So that is something to think about as you're strategizing for the fall. The other main point I would say, and Nikki described it great, is just make academics a priority. I think this is a great time to emphasize that to all the junior golfers and families. You know, the better your academics, whether it's your grades, your SAT, your ACT, the more options you're going to have. And the more options you're going to have, especially in this climate, is a great thing. The other benefit of that is you could get academic scholarship too, and you could be even a more viable option to a coach. So while we're talking about the ACT and what's going to happen there, or the SAT, I did want to just stress, just make academics a priority and be the best student that you can be.
That's good. That's a good point, Ted. Nikki, both, I mean, covered beautifully. I'd reiterate to Nikki's point about, players will need to inquire about test optional, because there are definitely schools out there that are test optional. The other thing that, if I'm not mistaken, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but if I'm not mistaken, they're now able to put their transcripts on the clearinghouse. So there's a little different way of going about being able to get their transcripts, and they can deliver them, on the NCAA clearinghouse site, so that people are able to get to them more, I guess, currently, if you will. Excuse me. Yeah, and transcripts. I mean, that's exactly what we've been preaching. I mean, high five to you, Fred. Ted, on the idea of allowing academics to help with their aid too. So transcripts are key right now, and I would be totally surprised because I spoke to a client this morning, actually an international client, and I know that their testing has already been backed up to even the latter part of September. So these are players that hadn't even had a chance to take it yet. So I know internationally they have been backed up to the 26th. I also found out today, sorry guys, but I just found this out, and you may have already known it, but for international players in the TOEFL, there's actually another option called the Duolingo exam. And that's something that if they're the English proficiency, they're able to do something like that online. So just a thought.